Hey guys, it's JC Theater Yu-Gi-Oh here today, and at the time of me filming this, it is April 1st, aka the first day of the new Master Rule, so I figured I'd bring you guys this deck profile for you with the newly unbanned Zodiac DRIDENT here. I've always been a fan of the Zodiac archetype. Of course, when it was in its prime, I actually couldn't afford to pick up the deck. I managed to pick up the core when they released in that year's Megatins. I believe it was Megatin 2017 or 18, 2017. And then the deck was neutered shortly thereafter, but now that Dryden's back, the deck has a little bit more life going into it, and it's definitely been hyped up because she is back. Without further ado, let's just get into my profile here. So first up for the deck here, we have Zodiac Whiptail, which is the playmaker and the play starter of the deck. Sadly, she is limited, but she's very important because when she's summoned onto the field, you get to Foolish Burial one Zodiac monster from your deck to the graveyard. So she definitely helps set up your graveyard, because then you can... The special thing about Zodiacs, for those of you who don't know, is you can overlay a Zodiac Xyz monster onto just a single Zodiac monster. So then you can start plays by changing her into the different Zodiac extra deck monsters. Next up, we play 3 Ram. And when Ram is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you get to special summon out a different Zodiac monster from your graveyard onto the field. So it's kind of like a monster reborn when it's destroyed. Next up, Zodiac Whiptail. Whiptail's main advantage is the fact that you can have it attached from your hand to your Zodiac monster on the field, and that increases that monster's attack by 1200 and gives another material to it as well. Like I said, since it is a Zodiac monster, you can normal summon it and automatically start going into the extra deck plays. Next up is Thoreau Blade, who's like a mini draw card in the deck because he lets you pitch a Zodiac card from your hand to the graveyard in order to draw one card from your deck. And then finally, for the Zodiac monsters in the main deck, I do play 1 Bunny Blast, just because her effect when she is destroyed and sent to the graveyard is you can add a Zodiac monster from your graveyard back to your hand. The recursion does help a little bit in certain scenarios. Bunny Blast definitely isn't important in the deck per se, so if you find any discrepancy on if you want to like copy this deck list or anything, Bunny Blast definitely isn't needed if you find a better card to put in instead. In addition to their on-field effects, the Zodiac main deck monsters also give any Zodiac Xyz that has them as material a different effect, and each one has a unique effect that they give it. So for instance, if the Zodiac Xyz has Bunny Blast as a material, if it's targeted by a spell card, you can remove an Xyz material to negate that activation. If it has Thoreau Blade, then that Zodiac monster does piercing damage. If it has Whiptail, at the end of the damage step, when it battles a monster, the opponent's monster is banished. If it has Ram, if they're targeted by a trap effect, then you can negate it by removing an Xyz material. And then Whiptail doesn't matter because it's limited to 1, but in theory, once per turn, you can remove an Xyz material to special summon out another Whiptail from your deck. So for the non-Zodiac main deck monsters, I play 1 Pankratops because it's just good in my opinion, and definitely a versatile removal as well as a body on board. 1 Zephyros the Elite, because we do play some continuous spell cards in this deck which we can bounce back to our hand. Sadly, we can't go into any crazy loops or anything, but this is basically a free body on board that allows us to use those continuous spell cards on the next turn. Next up, for hand traps, we have 3 Nibiru, just to stop any combo decks that might come our way. 3 Lancia, which is probably... I personally am main decking Lancia in this deck, but if you can think of any other like hand trap or anything else that you want to replace this with in this deck, feel free. Probably like Ghost Ogre or Effect Veiler or something of that nature, or whatever else you want to put in if you have any other side deck cards. Spoiler alert, I don't have any Lightning Storms, so maybe if you want to go that route and replace this 3 Lancias with Lightning Storms or something like that, but I know this isn't the best option, it's just the option I'm choosing in this deck for my personal preference. And then to round off the hand traps, of course, the 3 Ash Blossom. So for the spells, we have the 1 Zodiac Barrage. RIP, it's recently limited on the most recent list, but for good reason. Since we did get DRIDENT back, I feel like it's a pretty fair trade-off. So what it does is you can target 1 face-up card you control and destroy it, and then you can special summon 1 Zodiac monster from your deck. You can only use it once per turn, but if it's destroyed by a card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can target 1 Zodiac Xyz you control and attach Barrage from your graveyard to that Xyz material, to that Xyz monster as an Xyz material. So to break it down, basically Barrage is a free special summon from the deck, as well as you saw when we went over the main deck Zodiac monsters, some of them have effects, some of them have very good effects when you destroy them by a card effect. So this not only activates their effects, but also brings out a free body on board, a free searchable body at that. Another few one-ofs I have is 1 Monster Reborn, 1 Foolish Burial, since we want Ram in the graveyard as soon as possible, which is why Rapier is so important, because that can send Ram to the graveyard. Next up, I play 1 Card Destruction, because in this deck, I've seen a lot of people recently, especially with DRIDENT back, post deck lists with Pot of Desires, and I know even though Rapier is quite searchable, I would hate if I were to banish any of my important cards that I'm running a low count on in this deck. Pot of Desires is definitely an option though. I've seen, like I said, many people run it, so obviously it's not the worst option, but again, my personal preference, I'm not running Pot of Desires. This just kind of helps me dump things in the graveyard. Of course, since we're so hand trap heavy, it does counteract with that, so keep that in mind if you're planning on playing Card Destruction. And then again, another Banlist thing is the fact that Pot of Avarice is now at 3. I'm running it at 2 since you do need 5 monsters in the graveyard in order to activate it, so it's not a very good starter card, which is why Pot of Desires is being used as like a starter card. But Pot of Avarice is definitely very good when you can pull it off, and in this deck, because of the way the Zodiac cards work and how they're 1 card Xyz monsters, and then you can stack and remove materials, you can very easily get monsters in the graveyard in order to pull this card off. Next up, for the searchability of the deck, we play 3 Fire Formation Tenki just to search any of our Beast Warriors, which is all of the Zodiac monsters. And then I also play 3 Fire Formation Tenzu because this is basically a double summon for Beast Warrior monsters. It's not the best, and again, this is probably one you can manipulate with another card you think is better, but for me, I kind of like it. I like having more bodies on board, especially with Master Rule 5 now being a thing, or Master Rule 4 Revised being a thing. Now, if you have 2 Zodiacs on the field, you can make them both Xyz. You don't have to worry about going into a Link monster first. Next up, I have 3 Twin Twisters, just again to potentially send some cards to the graveyard so that way I can recur them, plus of course some spot removal. And finally, to round off the deck, I have 3 Called by the Grave, so that way our combos are least interrupted as possible. Now onto the extra deck. So for the extra deck, first off, I play 1 Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Tiger King because shutting your opponent's effects off are always pretty decent. Next up, I play 3 Zodiac Chakanine, which all of these Zodiac Xyz monsters gain attack and defense equal to the total attack and defense of the materials they have that are Zodiac monsters, and they are the ones who have the effects where they're the 1 card Xyz, where you can overlay them on top of 1 Zodiac monster on your field. And it doesn't have to be a main deck monster, which means you can stack the Zodiacs on top of each other as long as they're not the same name. So what you do for this is Chakanine is very good because she basically, by detaching a material, you can special summon out 1 Zodiac monster from your graveyard. The only stipulation is that its effect is negated and that special summon monster can't be used as an Xyz material. Next up, we play 3 Tiger Mortar. And Tiger Mortar allows you to detach 1 Xyz material from her in order to select 1 Zodiac monster in your graveyard and attach it to 1 Zodiac monster on your side of the field as an Xyz material. So basically, to sum it up, even though you already need a Zodiac in your graveyard as a target to legally activate this effect, basically you need one Zodiac in your grave and then one Zodiac attached to her, or one card attached to her, but in this case it will probably always be a Zodiac monster. You detach one, select a Zodiac from your grave, and attach it to another Zodiac on your field. She's a long way of basically moving a material over to another monster. Next up, I play one Hammer Kong and one Borbo. Hammer Kong and Borbo are really just names to me in the deck. I don't really ever sit on them exactly, but Borbo is able to attack directly, so that's something, especially when you get it beefy from the multiple different materials that you can have on it, whether it be Thoreau Blade for 1600 or something of that nature, or Whiptail adding the 1200 to it. And then finally, DRIDENT. The reason it was banned is because she allows you to quick effect detach an Xyz material to destroy one card on the field. Now the combo with this, really quick, just to let you know, is that you summon Rapier in order to send Ram to the graveyard. Then you overlay Rapier with Chakanine, and you have Chakanine's effect activate, and you remove the Rapier as the material, and you special summon out the Ram onto the field, and then you make Chakanine into DRIDENT. You have DRIDENT destroy that Ram on your side of the field, and the Ram's destroyed and sent to the graveyard, and when it's in the graveyard, its effect will activate, and you can special summon out that, you would remove the Chakanine for that, so then you would special summon out the Chakanine with the Ram's effect, and then from there you would overlay DRIDENT with Tiger Mortar. Tiger Mortar's effect activates, send DRIDENT to the graveyard, add either your Rapier or Ram to Chakanine, use Chakanine's effect, and have DRIDENT out, so then you'll have 3 Xyz monsters onto the field. Granted, none of them will have materials, but the important thing is you can link these 3 away for our win condition in 2020, which is Infinitrack Fortress Megaclops. I remember when this card was like 25 to 50 cents when it first came out, when all the other Infinitrack cards were a little bit more expensive. I'm definitely glad I bought it when it was that low. It's not too crazy now, but it's just crazy to me that at one point it was such a cheap card. This takes 3 Xyz monsters as materials, and it's unaffected by other monster effects except the effects of other Xyz monsters. This guy has 4,000 attack, and so a lot of decks that don't play Xyz monsters literally can't stop this guy. Not only is he a tough boss monster, but my favorite thing about him actually is his other effect, where you can have your opponent take half the damage they would for this turn, but in return you can special summon out an Xyz monster from your graveyard and attach a monster your opponent controls to that Xyz monster as a material. So he kind of can bring back, in my opinion, I like to go for DRIDENT, so that way you have a quick effect pop during your opponent's turn, and it just overall, Megaclops definitely helps this deck because now DRIDENT is able to make that little combo I showed you guys actually occur. Some other cards I have in the extra deck, just to round off the extra deck really, are just the, I personally believe are Master Rule 4.5 or Master Rule 5 or Master Rule Revised staples, which is Crusadia Avermax, Boral Sword Dragon, and Borreload Dragon. Probably not the Borreload Dragon though, but definitely Boral Sword and Avermax. And then if you have an Apollosa, which sadly I do not, I definitely recommend running that in the deck and getting rid of one of these link monsters. The 15th card in my extra deck I have right now is this new card from Dual Overload, Ahashima, which its first effect kind of doesn't work nicely with the Zodiac monsters, being that you can special summon out one monster from your hand and one monster from your graveyard with the same level, and then you can immediately Xyz summon a monster using both of those materials as materials. Since Zodiacs are 1 card Xyz, you don't really need to have 2 monsters to do that, but its second effect I like, because if an Xyz monster that it points to, which it has 1 arrow for us to have an Xyz monster there where it points to, it can destroy 1 spell or trap your opponent controls. This little spell and trap removal, I know we played Twin Twisters in the main deck, but I just think it's kind of interesting, and this is definitely me experimenting a little bit, because I feel like this Link monster is quite good. I just haven't found a deck personally where I can really abuse it yet, but I definitely think there is one. Thank you guys so much for watching the deck profile today. I think this is a little on the longer side, I'm not sure. I hope I didn't ramble too much. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I really liked the concept. I remember when this deck was announced, like OCG News and all that stuff, like on YG Organization and stuff. And ever since, I've just loved the concept of it and even the gameplay of it. I know this leaves a sour taste in a lot of players' mouths who had to deal with every single deck ever running 3 Barrage and a DRIDENT and a Broad Bull, but I like to see where the deck is at now because it doesn't look abusable, but it definitely is playable. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you like this kind of content, please subscribe. I think I might be doing a little bit more deck profiles like I did when I first started my channel. Now that the new Master Rule is out, I've been kind of like waiting on deck profiles a little bit, but I'm back in full force. If you like skits, if you like sealed only, if you like Yu-Gi-Oh, please consider subscribing. I'm JC Theater Yu-Gi-Oh. See ya!